adversity makes you smarter. Adversity makes you a better leader. It's probably the most important thing because we're going into some very, very adverse times. I do this because it's proof I said it, if you know what I mean. Because everybody now is a prophet. The biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. And I'm going to change the title to, it's here. This is the biggest crash we'll ever see in our lifetimes. It's called the everything bubble. Everything's going to come down. And that's how you can prepare for it. So for most people, that's bad news. But as I was saying last night, crashes, everything goes on sale. And you can't get rich at that time. You know, like right now I'm in hog's heaven because Saks is always having sales. I'm in there shopping. But the most important thing this country and the world needs, as you know, Europe's in trouble. They don't think the EU is going to make it. China's in trouble. Japan's in serious trouble. The world's in trouble. It's in trouble because of lack of leadership. And as President John Kennedy said, leadership and learning go hand in hand, basically. I'm here to serve those who serve. We need more leaders, ladies and gentlemen. But this country sorely lacks leaders. I'm not Republican or Democrat, but I just can't believe what's going on in our government. I mean, how can they open the borders? How can they cut off the Keystone XL pipeline? How can this guy blame Russia, the president blame Ukraine and Russia for our problems? We have food shortages. Sri Lanka, which is the richest island nations in the world, is in rioting right now. So we need leaders. This is a time for you to become bigger leaders because I think people are kind of waking up that maybe it's our leadership that's the problem. There's a guy named Jordan Peterson who said, if you think tough men are bad, just see the damage a weak leader can do. We've had weak leaders all over the world right now.
How bad do you think market crash is going to be? How bad, how ugly can it get?
The worst case, which I hope I'm wrong, is civil war inside America. That's more than a crash, it's a civil war. So the worst it could get is civil war. I think the best we can expect is probably a depression. We're already going into it. As I said last night, you know what we do, we print money to solve our problems. And all that does is increase debt and creates more freeloaders, social welfare. I'm not against social welfare, but don't print money to pay for it. At the same time, our debt escalates. Our debt to GDP right now is 120%. At 90% debt to GDP, we're bankrupt. That means for every dollar we spend, we go deeper in debt right now. So our debt is now in the trillions. I don't know how many trillions it really, I've heard it's 260 trillion. I don't know how they measure it anymore. At the same time, they raise interest rates into a recession. This has never been done before. So that's why I'm saying that somebody intentionally doing something to bring America down and the world down. And there's a video of Trump speaking to, I think, United Nations or something, and he's telling the German contingency back in 2018, he says, don't trust the Russians. Don't depend upon the Russians. And now Russia can cut off their power. So there's something really goofy going on. I'm not privileged to find out about it. I just want to put some fear into you because the more dangerous the mission, the better you've got to be. I talked about last night how, you know, when I was preparing to go to Vietnam as a Marine helicopter gunship pilot, our life expectancy was 30 days. 30 days. Now, most people say that's not good. I said, well, it inspired me to become a better pilot.
How does a person who has zero influence over the market, no control over interest rates at this phase of their life, how do they properly make the right moves to still be effective where the market's going to go good, bad, or ugly?
Stock markets, when they crash, go down in 3 phases. Boom, boom, boom. Phase 1 was bounce. It was called a bear market rally. This baby's going down, I hope, because I'm going to get richer. See, the thing right now is if you're afraid, it's because you got bad advice in your head. You're operating on bad information from your mommy, your daddy, your college professor, your school teachers, whatever it is. I get stimulated thinking about a crash because I'll say it again, the tougher it is, the smarter you've got to be. This time it's different. This is the new economy. We are just coming out of the longest bull run in history, 11 years. Started in 2011. And at 2011, I made the biggest fortunes of my life because that was the MBS, mortgage-backed securities, and the CDO crashes, the real estate crashed, and I backed up the truck and I borrowed $300 million to buy the best real estate all across the Southwest. This is the largest, longest bull market in history. I look at some of these young kids, and I own some Bitcoin, I own some Ethereum, but they're all saying the same thing. This time it's different, and Bitcoin's crashed. And, the Federal Reserve Bank, I can't believe that. I mean, people say, don't fight the Fed and all this. Well, my question to everybody is this: can the Fed print oil? Can the Fed print gasoline? Can it print food? But everybody sits there and they've been brainwashed by Wall Street to go, do as the Fed tells you to do. Well, you got to be kidding me. Those guys are the three stooges, Janet Yellen, Biden, and Powell. You got to be kidding me. Why would you listen to him? Volcker saying it's going to crush, so he raised interest rates, right? So Powell is now channeling the spirit of Volcker. And when Volcker crushed inflation, debt to GDP was 30%. And today it's 125% if you believe the numbers. So if he channels Volcker, and the other thing about history will tell you this: there's never been a soft landing. It's more Fed talk. I've made more money in the last 3 years in my whole life. And so that's what I want to talk about with you today, is that there's other ways of looking at investing, but to think that Powell is going to save you, when, as you may know, the reverse repo market is running at $2 trillion a day today.
Right.
$2 trillion a day. And people are listening to Powell? You got to be kidding me. I own no stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. I do not touch paper. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm saying people have been brainwashed by the Fed, the Treasury. Go to school, get a job, pay your taxes, get a high-paying job, and invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. It was in 1974 when I came back from Vietnam, a two-tour Marine helicopter pilot. I saw communism at work. It was not pretty. And I come back in 1974, they passed ERISA. ERISA stands for 401k right now, or IRA. And I went, oh my God, they're funneling my generation, the boomers, into the stock market. And they don't know anything about money. And in 1974, the biggest exodus was school teachers suddenly becoming financial planners. I watched it in horror. That's the poor leading the blind. And today we have baby boomers who are hoping the stock market stays up in their 401k just as Social Security goes bust. You think that's an accident? That's all I'm saying. I'm just a Marine. I'm a dumbass Marine lieutenant. Flew the gunship, went down 3 times. But today I listen to this bullshit and I go, oh my God, how can we be that stupid? Because we went to school, we did as we're told. Don't fight the Fed, do as the Fed tells you. Invest in a long-term, well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. And don't worry, Powell is now channeling Volcker. When the debt to GDP is 120%, you gotta be kidding me. So when they were dropping the interest rates, I thought I died and I went to heaven because I buy apartment houses. I own 13,000 apartment houses. Every time the Fed dropped the interest rates, it jacked the value of my properties up, but I also improved the properties and I refinance out. So today I own no money in any of my properties. 13,000 units, all throwing cash. They said in a bull market, even idiots feel smart. I'm listening to all these idiots, after 2011, the market crashed in 08 because the repo market went bad. And the repo market is the credit of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns was bad. So they hammered that. Anyway, it's a long story. My friends are all inside that world. But then when it came back out, they just started pumping money. And what they did was they kept printing more money to save a bad economy. It was already crashing again in 2011, but they kept printing money. And today we're going to pay that price. I use debt because debt is tax-free money. What I did was I rehabbed my apartment, 13,000 of them. I just kept buying more with the cash flow. And I'd refinance out as interest rates drop. So I'm in good shape now. Then I took them, then I set all interest rates right now. So I use debt. And who's that guy who says live debt free? Well, that's his opinion. I don't do that.
It's the banks run the world. The rich run the world. They don't care if you're communist or capitalist. And so the banks love it. They love people who borrow lots of money. So how do I get rich? I borrow money. And I buy assets with it. The poor person borrows money and buys liabilities like purses, cars, houses, and they get poorer and poorer and poorer.
Rule number 1 in Rich Dad Poor Dad: the rich don't work for money. Most people miss that. Well, that goes back to 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard and money became fake money. So anyway, my rich, I was preparing me to think about how can I make money without money. And the way I do it, I not saying write books because that's a tough industry, but I write a book today. I sell 50 licenses to 50 different languages, and I collect royalty. So anyway, my rich are preparing me to think about how can I make money without money. And the way I do it, I create an asset, like a book. I'm not saying write books because that's a tough industry, but I write a book today. I sell 50 licenses to 50 different languages, and I collect royalties for years, a long tail. So my money just keeps coming in. With that, I borrow. So let's say I make $10 in a book, I'll borrow $50 to invest in real estate. I step up my basis for depreciation. That's financial education.
Yeah.
That garbage they teach you about invest for the long term in the stock market. Why would I do that when I can make up my own assets? You know, that's what entrepreneurs do. Every entrepreneur should be making up their own assets and staying out of the stock market. That's my point of view. But can everybody do it? No, of course not.
Sure.
I've screwed up enough times to prove I can do it. And my accountant will back me up. Yeah, the guy is an idiot, but he does create assets.
Do you know why they tell you to save money?
I don't know.
Because the system of banking has nothing to do with communism or capitalism. So when you save, let's say you save $1 US or €1, 1 yen, the banking system can lend out 10. So the entire system is called the fractional reserve system. The fractional reserve system is also printing money. And then they tell you to save money. So they want you to save money so they can lend out your money 10 times. So your dollar became worthless 10 times over. And then they used to pay you 10% interest on your money. Now it's at best 1%. And they're still lending it out 10 times. So that's why you don't save money, is because your money is becoming worth less and less and less and less and less. The banks are getting richer and richer and richer. Then they tax you on that interest they pay you. That 1% interest, if they pay you that much. Japan is 0. And the Japanese are so stupid, they still save money.
We also have 0.
And they still save money. How stupid is that? That's what I would question. So how come that happens? Now, if I borrow money, guess what? Do I pay taxes on debt?
I guess no.
Why is that? This is what I'm saying, okay? Question everything.
Okay.
So when they lend out money, that's how money is created. Money is debt. They lend out, why is debt tax-free?
I don't know.
Because that's how money is created. And so the banks love it. They love people borrow lots of money. But I use debt. I borrowed $300 million after the crash, dollars. In 2000, by 2010, I had borrowed $300 million to buy real estate. That made me rich. And the interest rates kept coming down, so that my cost of money kept coming down. And so everybody else is saying, oh, you should get out of debt. You know why? Because they don't question the hypnosis they're under. You've been hypnotized to work hard for money, to save it. The fractional reserve system prints it. And then they pay taxes of taxes. So I have all this debt and I get rich.
Passive income is generally what happens when you invest in the stock market. I mean, portfolio income. So they say, well, I bought Tesla at 100, it went up to 200, and I sold it, so I made $100. That's portfolio income. That's taxed at the next higher level. So when I have passive income, it's tax-free. Getting passive income, you have to know what you're doing. That's why I have the best, first of all, bookkeeper, accountants, attorneys, bankers. I operate as a team. Just like when we flew into combat, we're a team. And most people are trying to do it self-employed way. You know, I'm a good computer programmer. Good. You pay the highest taxes, you work the hardest, you don't get ahead that way. But that's what most people, they want to do it on their own. You know, if you want it done right, do it by yourself. And an employee is always saying the same words. I'm looking for a safe, secure job with benefits and a paycheck and a pension. That's what they're looking for. The tax law are nothing but incentives, not punishments. So if you donate, I just donated money to the food bank. They're out of food. So it's $10,000. I get a tax break. I don't donate money to the food bank, no tax break. So because I have 7,000 rentals in apartment houses, I got a tax break. You know why? Because I'm providing housing. And because I have thousands of employees, the tax break. The government even sent me money to pay my employees.
The S&P 500 is really the S&P 7, and it's being held up by Treasury Secretary Yellen and Powell. So there's no correlation between the economy and what Yellen and Powell are doing. I said one more thing is that I'm a little strange in that I like crashes. So this next crash is going to be really, really good, but it'll bring down gold, silver, Bitcoin, stocks. But the good news is a crash is a good time to get rich. The big debate is there inflation or deflation? And if you look historically, what's happened today is the nominal debt to GDP is a correlation of M2, the volume of money, times the velocity of money. And the reason Yellen and Powell are scrambling is because they've expanded M2, so everybody thinks there's going to be inflation. But velocity of money, which is what Jim Records and I always talk about, the velocity of money is plummeting. People are not spending. So they pump all this money in, prices go up. Meanwhile, the Asians are catching up now. The ports are finally open. So it is transitory inflation. But the problem is we're stacked with this massive debt, and all it's done is bump up the stock market and real estate market. The money has not gone into the economy. That's the sad part. So the rich get richer, but the poor and middle class are getting poorer. It's tragic what's happening today. I don't know what it'll exactly be, but you can't keep printing fake money. That's M2. And the velocity of money keeps dropping, but the debt keeps going up. So you and I don't have to go to Harvard to understand that's not good. This is going to be the biggest crash in world history. We've never had this much debt pumped up. Debt is the biggest problem of all, but that's called M2, money supply. And the debt to GDP ratio is out of sight. So when it comes down, which it brings everything down with it. And I want to give people the big picture. The reason I don't care for Yellen or Powell, because they're both Marxists. And when I say that, I get nailed. I will read you a quote from Lenin. Okay, this is Vladimir. This is the establishment of a central bank. This is a direct quote. Is 90% of a communizing of a nation.